Hello, Ottawans, and welcome back. Today, we're discussing a different side of home ownership, the construction and renovation side. Here's a stat to set the stage. Most homes in Ottawa are built in between the 1960s and 80s, which means that most homes in Ottawa are 40 to 50 years old, which brings the big question. When is it time to renovate? Experts say that you should do major renovation every 15 to 20 years, which is why we're here today with Capital Finishing. And they're here to help us make these processes clear, from choosing the right materials to knowing the prices involved. Today, I'm joined with Brad Shane, whose main job is helping homeowners turn their real estate dreams into reality. Welcome, Brad, and thank you for being here today.
Well, thank you for having us. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. In the beginning, could you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Brad Shane. I'm the owner and general manager of Capital Finishing, Construction, and Renovations. We mostly specialize in interior finishing projects. Most commonly, we renovate kitchens, refinish bathrooms, finish basements. They often have kitchens and bathrooms, and we do a lot of interior structural changes where we're changing the way the property flows, the way light comes into the home, those sort of.
That is perfect, because today's main goal is to help everyone out there understand, from homeowners, buyers, and sellers, the ins and outs of renovations. First up, we have kitchens. Can you walk us through some of the main areas of renovation and how you approach them?
Yeah, so if you're considering renovating your kitchen, the first thing that I would do is I would reach out to a homeowner and have a quick consultation by phone, talk a little bit about things like timeline, budget, what you're hoping to accomplish through this renovation. Potentially do you and your spouse have a shared vision of what you want to do here? And then, provided it makes sense to go to the next step, most commonly we go on site, we have a meeting, we'll walk through the property and talk a little bit about the options.
Yep.
Usually the homeowners have some sort of idea of the direction that they would like to go. And we typically try to break it down into three categories. And I'll start from the most cost efficient and sort of go up from there. So one option would be some version of a refurbishing of the existing kitchen. Can you salvage, or do you want to salvage part of what's existing and try to bring it back to life? From there, the next version up is to go to some sort of a modular kitchen, IKEA being the most common product out there today. They're not the only one, but we do a ton of their kitchens. And then going up from there, you get into a fully customized kitchen where, the sky is the limit on what you can do. Now, with each of those options, there's a price point that rises with it. And that's part of why we try to start out with talking about things like budget and trying to understand the direction the client is looking to go.
That's interesting. It sounds like there's an option for everybody.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah. We have some of the projects that you worked on prior. So walk us through the first initial visit. You walk in, that's what the kitchen looks like. What's the initial conversation with the homeowner?
The key to getting this moving in the right direction, in my experience, is ensuring that you're asking the right questions. It doesn't make sense to talk about a $100,000 kitchen reno if they only want to spend, let's say, 25. So in the example that you're looking at here, the direction that we agreed to go here was a refurbishing of the existing kitchen. Now, this kitchen you're looking at here has a honey oak finish on the cabinetry. It was extremely well built, so it was a great candidate for a refurbishing of what was existing. And that's the direction that we decided to go.
How do you make that decision? How do you determine if you're going to retouch, upgrade, renovate any part of the kitchen that you're walking into?
That's a great question. I would say to be able to make that decision, I need to be able to go on site, touch it, feel it, and see it. We want to make sure that the kitchen is going to last, I would say, a minimum of another 10 years.
Yeah.
Right. So the first thing is it made of actual wood? Is it something that can withstand the process of being refurbished and brought back to life? And is it going to live another, I would say, at least 10 years?
Yeah.
So in the example of the kitchen we're looking at here, it was original to the home. It was about 33 years old when we started to renovate it.
Yeah.
I mean, those cabinets will probably be good for 50 years,
Yeah.
is my guess, unless someone destroys them between. Yes.
Okay, so this is the before. Now we move to the after. Can you tell us what exactly did you change when it comes to this kitchen?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So in the first picture, there was an elevated bar, which was very common. There was an elevated bar top, very common build to the time. Today, what people typically like is a large flat space, like what you have here is a peninsula, or
Yeah.
of course, a lot of people have more of an island style.
Yeah.
So we removed the bar. That was the first part. So that was cut off to make it all flat, so you could make a large eating breakfast bar area.
Yeah.
So we removed all the countertops. The doors were all removed, and they were numbered, and they were actually refurbished on site.
Okay.
And the boxes were done where they sit. So as you may have noticed in the first picture, it had
Yeah.
a honey oak finish. And then we went to a two-toned look where it's dark blue on the bottom, light on the top, added some new black hardware to update the look. And the only real remnants that's left of the old kitchen is really the inlay in the doors. So
Yeah.
that's an older style, but
Yeah.
for the most part, from 10 feet away, once the new countertops and the new backsplash went in, I mean, you're essentially looking at a new kitchen for a fraction of the price.
Another major feature in kitchens is backsplashes. Not only do they add an aesthetic feature to the kitchen, but they also help in moisture prevention for the kitchen walls. We have a couple of types of backsplashes here. So, would you say that backsplashes are DIY friendly?
I would say, as a general rule, tiling is not DIY friendly. Most people would not have the skill to be able to do this. There's lines moving in multiple directions, and getting those grout lines running properly across a 10 or 15 foot span does take some skill. So I'd say for the average homeowner, the answer is no. Now, the one exception to that might be if you were to use something like a peel and stick tile.
Yeah.
But that's not something that I would install, and I don't have a lot of experience of how long it would last. But maybe a vinyl tile might be a reasonable solution if you wanted to go that way. But I would say I would leave the tiling to professionals if it was me. In the example that you see here, we went with a very classic looking subway tile, and it had a new updated spin on it where it's a 9x3 subway tile, which is larger than usual, and it's a glass finish.
What's the downside of the peel and stick backsplash installment?
The downside.
So I know you don't work with them.
Yeah, not having a lot of experience with it, my concern would be how long is it going to last?
Yeah.
As you mentioned, a backsplash is not necessary, but drywall and water are not a great match. So I would suggest that it adds a nice feature piece to the wall to finish off the project.
Yeah.
And I would say for waterproofing purposes, you definitely want to do it. So there's two main reasons. I haven't done a kitchen without a backsplash in the years that I've been doing this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another major feature in kitchens is the countertops.
Yes.
Now, if you're budget conscious, laminate is the way to go. It has a lower
I would
price
agree
point.
with that. My personal opinion is that you should spend the extra money on a stone countertop. You'll see the difference in where the project comes to life. And in the example that we had here earlier, they had saved some money on the cabinetry.
Yeah.
So it really made sense to dress up the older cabinetry with a really nice backsplash and a nice countertop. And that really was the piece that brought the project to life. But yes, you can look at some sort of a laminated countertop. They usually start supply and install something in the range of like $30 a square foot. So there is a relatively substantial savings if that's the direction you decide to go.
As for the more luxurious options that you have with kitchen countertops, you have granite, you have marble, and quartz. They all have their own pros and cons, but they're more luxurious than laminate. Which one would you recommend the most?
Yeah, that's a great point, and I really do think it's worth spending the extra money on the stone countertop. So for years, the most popular thing that people installed was granite.
Okay.
Now, granite is a beautiful product. All options have some positives and negatives. The most common thing that people install today is quartz. Quartz is a man-made product, so it starts out as a stone. A resin is added to it. It's incredibly durable, in my opinion. And it actually comes at a cheaper price point today than a traditional granite. So that is the most common thing that we install today.
Yeah. When it comes to granite, it needs sealing every year.
Yeah, so it needs maintenance as the time goes on. So it is a natural product. So anything you're dealing with that is natural, there's going to be some inconsistencies in the material. And this is why I'm such a big fan of quartz. I think it is just the consistency of the product. the
Yeah.
price point, how durable it is. I really think it's unbeatable. And for the most part, if you go to a supplier, this is what they're going to be offering. This is where you're going to have the most wide array of options.
Quartz also mimics the look of a natural stone.
Yeah.
So it has that aesthetic feeling.
Yes, it
of,
does.
Of, it looks, most of the time, it looks like marble.
Yes, it does. It has they all have a very similar look.
So on a top 3 rating, how would you rate them?
Well, I would definitely rate quartz as your number one option. That's
Okay.
I would strongly recommend that's the direction that you go. Now,
Better than marble.
this is a personal preference.
Okay.
I think most people would look at marble and they would think it's fancier.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
I'm not one of them. I think for the price point, for value for your dollar,
Yeah.
quartz is definitely the way to go. And if you go to any major supplier in Ottawa, that's
Yeah.
mostly what they're going to be offering.
Marble also chips, so it breaks
It
the
can,
corners, and also it actually stains faster than.
I mean, they all can be damaged.
Yeah.
It's possible. Right. They just need to be relatively well taken care of. I mean, we have 2 children at home and, they're pretty rough on stuff, 2 young boys, and we've never had any problems. I mean, the only downside of quartz is if you put something hot enough on it, it can melt into the resin. There's a resin in it that's binding
And that's
it
quartz.
together. That's if you go with a quartz. But my understanding is it has to be like 400 degrees or something in that range. So it's very unlikely.
Yeah. Before we move to a different room in the house, let's talk about a more budget-conscious option, which
Okay.
is refurbishing.
Yeah.
Now, we have a project of you refurbishing a kitchen.
Okay.
And so refurbishing in the beginning, it's not to change things, but to enhance whatever is out there already. So it's retouching, repainting, removing some certain parts and save the major parts that can work. When do you recommend it to clients?
So we would have to ensure that that it's the right candidate. So the first thing is they have to be actual real wood cabinets. So anything that's more than 30 years old, typically that's going to be the case. You get into the newer builds, you might find stuff that is made out of something like an MDF or some sort of a fiberboard. I won't refinish stuff like that. It's just not, it's intended to be used for 20 years and then you tear it out and you replace it. So the first thing is it needs to be made of actual wood and I need to inspect it on site to ensure that the decision we're making for the homeowner is the right path forward.
Okay.
So even if someone wants us to do something, it doesn't make sense. We won't do it if it's the wrong thing for the client ultimately.
We have a refurbishing project that you worked on.
Yep.
Could you walk us through what's the initial meeting with the owner was like?
Yeah. So in this particular case, I met with the homeowner, and this will play very nicely into the podcast because the purpose of this meeting, this was a returning client of mine.
Yeah.
And she called me and she was getting ready to get her house ready for sale. So, she wasn't building this for her.
Okay.
She was building it to sell it to someone else.
Yeah.
So she was very budget conscious in this particular example. She wanted it to look great in the pictures. She wanted it to show well, but she didn't want to blow through her entire budget on one room because there was multiple projects that we did there throughout the home. So this was the plan that we had put together, was to refurbish what was existing, couple it with a beautiful new countertop and a beautiful new stone backsplash. And I thought for the dollar value that she spent, I thought it turned out great.
Yeah.
And in the end of the day, the house sold pretty quickly. So I think it worked out pretty good for the homeowner.
We have the process as well of the refurbishing, and we can see that you painted the cabinet doors. Now, was that done on site?
That is actually in the client's garage. So I offer 2 versions of this. So we will strip, sand, and refinish on site. The doors will be done on site and the boxes will be done as they sit on the wall, and then new hardware is added and everything is reinstalled. There's also an option to have them sent out and have them sprayed and you get more of a factory finish. These turned out very, very nicely, but that is done on site with the brush and roller.
So you're done with refurbishing the kitchen, and this is what it looks like after. It looks absolutely astonishing.
It was a big change, and the big difference here for me, if you were to walk in before we started, the kitchen looked tired. And I think when you go to buy a house, where are the first places that people look? They typically look in the kitchens and the bathrooms, and they're the first places people want to renovate. So we were able to bring it up to a level that you wouldn't look at it and go, there's the first project we have to do when we walk in.
Not only that, but honestly, the lights on top, the thing that looks like a natural light coming in, when you look at it in the before photos, it doesn't look as good After you refurbish the kitchen, it looks way better.
Yeah, so she did make some compromises in what she wanted to do originally. So the
Yeah.
floor is still original, and so is the box lighting on the ceiling.
Yeah.
The cabinets were refurbished. New hardware was added. New stone countertop was added by our friends at Canada Granite, and then we installed a nice backsplash, small subway tile, a mosaic subway tile. A little bit of electrical had to be upgraded. That was not really a choice, unfortunately. But for the most part, all in all, I mean, it turned out great.
Budgeting in renovation projects is very necessary for homeowners. So we have the price breakdown for this specific project that you've made. It's very important to know what steps that you need to take to do such a project. And things that people would not expect is plumbing and electrical. It's a refurbishing of a kitchen project.
Yeah, one of the tough realities of being in the business that I'm in is there's sometimes problems hiding behind the walls and under the floors that you don't know what is there until you open them.
Yeah.
Now, if there's a water leak and there's been a water leak for 5 years, you're not going to be surprised to know that the floor is soft and, things have to be upgraded. Unfortunately, sometimes there's problems left behind. They're left behind through previous renovations. There are code issues that have changed. There's a multitude of reasons why you may have to upgrade things. Usually those are plumbing and electrical, the ones that you don't expect.
So for
typically.
this project, why would you need plumbing? Why did you
Right. So in the previous rendition of the kitchen, it had a top-mounted sink. So it was a drop-in style sink over a laminated countertop.
Yeah.
In the new version, we went to a stone countertop. It was quartz. So they went with an under-mounted sink. So the plumbing under the sink had to be reworked to hook that all up. We added new faucets to update the look. So a plumber was needed on site to do a few small things.
What about the electrical?
So very, very similar. The electrical, there was a few things that had to be deleted. There was an intercom system, which you don't see much anymore, which had to be deleted.
Yeah.
And then the electrical was not up to code from a GFCI standpoint. So we had to do a bit of upgrading around the water to bring it up to today's code.
Bathrooms are another popular options. Do we have some trends there? Like, let's talk about something that's more budget friendly and high-end options.
Yeah, so for us personally, most of the higher end is in the finishing, right? So the clients are typically either they're shopping for and purchasing the finishing directly. They're self-designing the project, which is very, very common. Or B, they're working with a designer and the designer is helping them through that. So whether you buy $2 or $3 a square foot tile from Home Depot or you import Italian marble, we're going to install either one. So it actually doesn't make huge changes to the prices of what we do, because usually that's supplied outside of what we do. Now, ultimately, if the homeowner wants us to do an all-in supply and install for everything, we do that. This is typically the best way to do it. The homeowners can shop in their spare time, and they can agree on what they want as the finished pieces of the project.
A big part of bathrooms renovation process is tiling, especially being a place with a lot of runny water. Now, what's the essential steps that you have to take in the tiling process?
That's a great question. So there's two things we're trying to accomplish when we tile. The first one is we want it to be beautifully aesthetically, but we want it to also be very structurally sound. So the first thing that we do on day one is we take the bathroom apart and it's demoed. Everything is removed and it is stripped down to a square box. Right? So you can see the drywall, you can see the subfloor, and if there was any water damage, it's going to be obvious at this point. So we fix up any drywall or flooring that is necessary, and then we give the bathroom a Schluter waterproofing system. So that is done anywhere that you are going to have either a tub or a shower or a tub shower combo. So it gets a full Schluter waterproofing system, and so does the bathroom floor. So for us at this stage, this is a non-negotiable. We do not renovate bathrooms without a proper waterproofing system, even if the customer requests it. Now, this does come up from time to time because it wasn't always a standard part of the build. Typically, if we're taking bathrooms apart that are 20 plus years old, you won't see any waterproofing. It's just tile over subfloor. It's usually what you're looking at. So this is a new step, and it's fairly standard. Most contractors are doing it, I would say. But for us, it's a non-negotiable. We do it on every project.
We can see here another bathroom project that you've renovated. Is this modern look mainly created via tiling?
Yeah, I would say that the answer to that is yes. So before we started that project, there was a tub shower combo in this space, and it was converted to a walk-in shower with a shower curb and a glass door.
Okay.
So the design portion was actually done through the husband and wife, mostly the wife, which is usually the case, right? And they did the shopping directly, and they purchased the tile directly and had it on site waiting for us. So we met together, we looked at the
Yeah.
project, they told me what they're thinking. I gave my input on what I thought might be your best options.
Yeah.
And as usual, you get people working together, and the best ideas bubble to the top, and this is what they came up with.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very clean. Has a very modernized look.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it turned out beautifully.
So this is what the bathroom looks before.
Okay.
What was the initial visit like?
So I met with the two homeowners. They live in the Ottawa Valley area, and two lovely people, getting on in years. Two wonderful people, very nice. Wife had a great eye for design, so she designed most of it and did a lot of the picking.
Okay.
If the husbands are smart, they just give the wives what they want, right? And that's mostly what this gentleman did.
Yeah.
So it's a very typical 3-piece bathroom. You had a tub and shower combo, a vanity, and a toilet. And there wasn't a lot of room in a bathroom of this size to make any footprint changes. So for the most part, it was a direct remove and replace. Everything went back in a similar spot.
Yeah.
It was just cleaned up and brought into 2024.
So this is what it looks like after. And right now we're taking a look at this special needs assistant handler, correct? Why
Yeah,
did you
so
install that one?
we back framed and added some grab bars. So as I mentioned, in this particular example, the couple is getting on in years. So
Okay.
and the reality is, if people get to a certain age, I usually discuss the needs over the next 20 years.
Yeah.
If the bathroom is well done, which ours always are, it should be good for 20 or 25 years, right? So, you want to consider where you're going, are
Yeah.
you staying in this house? So we back framed 4 and added some grab bars for safety reasons, and which will come in handy in the coming years for the homeowner, I'm sure.
Not only did they think about the next 20 years,
Yeah.
they also thought about today. I mean, look at the shower head.
Yeah, so
This is some
that
luxury.
particular look has been very in style this year.
Yeah.
Installed a lot of those. So that has a chrome or a brushed nickel finish to it, and black has been very common. We've done a lot of these in those two colors this year, for sure.
When discussing the budgeting price points, what's the budget price point that you would rate this specific project at?
Yeah, so if you're building a standard 3-piece bathroom, you're typically looking at something between 15 and 20 grand. If everything goes well and the stars align, we're probably in and out for about 15. If there's water problems that need to be fixed and a lot of the drywall needs to be removed and stuff like that, you're probably looking at closer to 20. The average one we do is about 17. It's usually right in and around where they come in. Now, I should mention that does not include the finishes. So depending on your taste, I mean, you may spend somewhere between 25 and 5.
So we have the price point breakdown
Yeah.
of this specific project that you've created, and the total cost stands at $17,075.
Yeah.
So this is right in between the mid to high end range, you would say?
Yeah, it's right in the meaty part of the curve. I mean, that's sort of what I tell people right off the bat.
Yeah.
Is that's usually in and around where they come in. That for that price, we supply you a 2-man labor team. The lead builder is an absolute expert in kitchens and bathrooms. We supply a plumber to do the plumbing, electrician to do the electrical. We supply basically everything except for the finishes.
Yeah.
So the clients, they work together and they shop for the finishes directly. They either do that themselves, or B, they may do it with a designer.
How much would a high end bathroom be estimated at, if it's the same size as this bathroom that you were looking at?
Yeah, see, the problem, there's only so much you can do based on the footprint. When you get into higher end bathrooms, you have to have room to change the footprint of the bathroom. So if you get into a big 4-piece bathroom, so you have a separate, maybe a standalone tub or a deck tub, which were very popular at one time. We mostly take them all out today, but they were popular at one time, and a separate shower. So you get into a 4-piece bathroom with a large footprint, and you can start moving the plumbing around inside the floor. That's typically where the cost starts to go up. So, I mean, you could spend as much as $40,000 probably on a bathroom if you want to go crazy. Probably the most expensive bathroom I've done this year is about 30 grand.
What kind of projects do you typically see in basements, and what do homeowners usually want?
Yeah, so when a homeowner approaches us about finishing a basement, it's a very, very common thing that we do, and a very common thing I get calls for. There's tons of houses in Ottawa built in the last 20 years, especially in the subdivisions that don't have finished basements.
Yeah.
So sometimes people might call us, 2 years after they bought it and they've built up a little equity in the home. Sometimes they might call us 20 years later. But usually, for the most part, when we're finishing them, they're probably built in the last 20 or 25 years. So the most common reasons that people come to us to do this are, one is they want to add additional living space for them and their family. So use the example of my own family. We have 2 small boys, 5 and 7 years old. The value of that basement is hard to put a price on, because when things are going awry on the main floor, you can send the kids down to the basement and they can go and act crazy and do what boys do down there. They shoot hockey pucks and wrestle and do all the crazy things that little boys do. So from that perspective, it adds a ton of value to your family's ability to all live together and get along, and everyone to have their own space. The other reason, we get a lot of requests for some version of a living space for someone. Now, that could range anywhere from, I have a teenage son and they want to have their own space in the basement, to I have an elderly parent and we need to create, a living space for them down there, to even to a secondary dwelling unit, which has become very popular. We built a few SDUs this year, which is a very common request.
That's really amazing. It sounds like there's a lot of options for everybody.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to finishes and materials, do you provide a lot of options when it comes to basement renovations?
Yeah, so for the most part, a lot of people want the same thing. They want a very typical sort of 5-room basement.
Yeah.
So they want to have one large open space, which is like a large living room slash place for the kids to play.
Yeah.
They want to add a bedroom. They want to add a bathroom. I typically recommend, if you're adding a bedroom, you add a 3-piece bathroom so it has a shower in it also. So if someone could potentially kind of live down there, or when guests are staying, they have their own space. Usually we make some version of an electrical room where you have your furnace and water heater and that kind of stuff. And then there's some version of storage, might be under the stairs, where you've created a junk storage for hockey bags and Christmas trees and all the kind of stuff you're trying to keep hid and away from everyone. So that's a very typical 5-piece basement build, which is typically what we do.
Now, since basements are below ground level, there's a high risk of moisture. What are these steps to take to make sure that the space stays dry and safe?
That's a great question. So the first thing is, I talk to the homeowners. One of the first questions is a little bit about what the last year or two has been like. Has there been any water problems into the basement?
Okay.
Right now, unfortunately, waterproofing a basement from the inside is really not a very good option. There are products out there to do that. Typically, if you have cracks in the foundation or you're having water issues, probably you have some drainage issues or some kind of problem around your house, something that will involve having someone come in and excavate and possibly re-waterproof or work through, how the water is moved away from your home.
Yeah.
That's a little bit outside of what we do. Now, we can do it, and we can I have an expert. We have a guy for everything.
Yeah.
So if you need our guy, we'll bring him in, and we can do that first. But you're getting into a much larger project. So typically what happens, if that needs to be done, it ends up being broken into different phases. So they might do that 1 year and then maybe finish it 2 years later. That's usually what ends up happening, because there's a big price jump.
Okay, let's talk about design ideas. What's trends you're seeing in basement renovation projects?
Well, a very common one that I never used to hear before is people need additional office space. Right?
Okay.
In the last 5 years or so after COVID, people are working from home, and a lot of houses need to be retrofitted so people have proper offices. So building an office area into the basement has
Okay.
become a very common piece of the build, and that never used to really be the case. So that's been a common one. I bring that up and kind of
Probably after COVID when people started working
yeah.
from
So
home.
a lot of people are still working from home,
Yeah.
and the houses often are not well set up. So that's been a common one for sure.
Yeah, so it's not mainly about having more space, but having more space with a purpose.
Yeah, trying to understand what people want to do with the space. You know, a lot of the time the places are being built so the kids have a place to go. But there's no limit to what we can do.
Yeah.
Right. If you want to build something so you have some sort of a music studio, or you want to build something so you have a theater room, like there's only two limits. I often joke with our customers, there's only two limits to what we can do. One is your imagination and the other is your wallet, but anything you want, we can build.
When you usually take these projects, do you see a trend of homeowners wanting, from a design perspective, when it comes to basement renovations, do they want the basement to blend seamlessly with the rest of the house, or do they want a bold look?
For the short answer is usually yes. So usually we're putting a similar profile on the doors and the baseboards to what's in the upstairs of the home. So for instance, if you have like a 6-panel door throughout the house, we would put 6-panel doors in the basement and sort of make it look like it was all finished together. Now there's some examples where people are adding a lot more wood and they're building things like bars and areas to play cards and things like that, where it may be completely different. But for the most part, more often than not, they want it to have a uniform feel throughout the house.
Back to your projects.
Yeah.
We have an unfinished basement project that you've managed. What were the owner's requirement when you first walked in?
Yeah, so this was an interesting one because the homeowner is a relatively talented builder themselves.
Okay.
So, the year before I was there, they built a whole back deck themselves and they did a pretty good job. This gentleman probably could have done this himself if he wanted to spend 6 months of nights and weekends building the basement, which he decided he didn't, and that's why he hired us. So when I showed up, he had the design done.
Okay.
What he does for a living, he has access to some design software. So he had it all laid out. It was all planned. He knew pretty much exactly what he wanted to build.
Yeah.
So that made my job very easy and very similar to what we said. There's a huge convertible space that can be used as like a rec room.
Yeah.
There is a bedroom. There is a bathroom. There's an electrical room, and there's storage under the stairs. So this is where most of them land, is something very, very similar to
So we can see the process of what the project looks like during. How long did it take you to finish a project?
That's about 6 weeks start to finish.
So what takes the builder who owns the house 6 months took you 6 weeks.
Yeah, and I'm all for people DIYing things that they can do.
Yeah.
I'm all for it, but you're going to be living in a mess for a long time. And that's the thing that you have to factor in. So for a basement, it's not that invasive. But if that's your kitchen and it's torn apart for months on end, that's a little tougher for your family.
Now, the after photos look quite impressive. It looks like a full house. We have a bathroom, we have a recreational room, we also have an office space and a bedroom.
Yes.
Is that what was made?
Yes. So the wife had an idea of creating an office space down there for her, and they kind of had this vision. They're cat people. They have two lovely little felines that were around throughout the build, and we created for her a built-in desk. So it's not something that can be removed. It's built right into the wall and into the project.
Okay.
It has shelving on the front, and on the back side, there's 2 10x10 openings where the cats can get inside and they can sit in these boxes and they can rest. So when the lady is working at her desk, the cats are often sitting there in an elevated position, just hanging out with her while she works. She loved this project. As soon as it was done, she was posting it online and telling her friends how much she loves that the cats hang out with her while she works. So I love customized projects. If the customer can dream it up, we can build it.
Yeah.
So that's sort of a brainchild, a combination of what they were going to do with some stuff that they talked to me about. And then our lead builder, when he was on site, he even had an idea or two to add to it. So I thought it turned out great. The picture really doesn't do it justice.
Yeah. When it comes to budgeting of this project, we have the price breakdown as well.
Yeah.
The total cost of this basement renovation project stands at $51,000. Now, you've built a bathroom out of thin air.
There was a bathroom rough-in left behind by the builder.
Okay, so
there
plumbing were
the
easier.
plumbing was already built into the concrete. We had to adjust it a little bit, but there was some plumbing already done.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you've built a bedroom,
Yeah.
a recreational room, and the desk, the office space.
Yeah, and we also partitioned off the electrical room where you'll find the furnace and the hot water, and
Yeah.
then there's some very rough storage built in under the stairway for, kind of junk storage.
We also have a project that you've done in a hotel. That means you work with commercial renovations. You work with corporates as well.
Yes, we do. So we do some light commercial projects, and we do some like B-level government type stuff also. Yeah, so we will do commercial projects under the right circumstances.
We don't have the before photos,
'Kay.
but we have the after. So talk about what the project was like.
Yeah, so a hotel here in Ottawa reached out to us, and they had a project completed about 7 or 8 years ago where they serve their breakfast, and they basically wanted to build a duplicate of what is existing. Now, unfortunately, since this was built, a lot of people have changed positions. Nobody had a lot of the paperwork and the documentation that we would like to try to make this an exact match.
Yeah.
But I work directly with my countertop suppliers. I work directly with my millwork guy, and we were able to custom build a set of cabinetry to fill this space. Countertops. We added some electrical because it's pulling a lot of power, having chafing dishes and things like that plugged
Yeah.
in for serving breakfast.
Yeah.
And the picture in the top is the one that we built. The picture in the bottom is another one about 15 feet away. And for all intents purposes, they're an exact match.
Yeah.
Right. And you'd have to examine it with a magnifying glass to
Wow.
tell the difference. So
It looks absolutely identical. It looks like a project that was built at the same time.
yeah, so if you were walking by 10 feet away, you would never know that these were built 7 years apart. They
Yeah.
look identical for the most part. So this is not a common build. We only did one like that this
Yeah.
year, but a very common project that people request today is some sort of a breakfast bar area, coffee bar area as part of their kitchen renos. So we've built a lot of these as part of larger
Yeah.
kitchen renovations.
We would also like to know about the pricing of this project.
Okay.
We have the price breakdown, and this is what it looks like. So you've also included electrical in this project.
Yeah.
Why would you need electrical for a
So
cabinet?
because of the amount of power that is being pulled to keep the food warm,
Okay.
so we had to add some additional electrical to bring it up to code and to make sure you're not going to be tripping breakers and having problems, while they're trying to serve breakfast, which would obviously be a huge problem.
Okay, so an electrician was involved in this project.
Yeah, so all electrical we do is done by an electrician.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really bend on that, and same with the plumbing. Plumbing is done by plumbers. Electrical is done by electrician. So in this particular case, this was a complete supply and install. The countertops were included, all the tile was included. So that number is a true number of what it cost them to have the project.
A simple project,
Yeah.
if I may say, is the upgrade of a laundry room. Now,
Okay.
unless plumbing is involved, what should a homeowner consider?
Yeah,
when
so
they're planning on such a project.
So fancy laundry rooms have been really in style the last couple of years.
Yeah.
We just built one at my wife's request in our own home, and originally laundry rooms were built in sort of a very utilitarian type manner. And today, people often want them finished very similar to the way the kitchens are finished. So this is a project that's become more and more popular for sure. Yeah, so if you're moving a laundry room on a third floor, you've got to get plumbing and electrical changes done on the third floor. That becomes more of a challenge. Now,
Yeah.
there's no limit on what we can do, but if you have to take half of the house apart to do it, it may not make sense for the homeowner. But laundry rooms on the main floor or in the master bedrooms or in the basement are substantially easier to do typically. So yeah, fancy laundry rooms are really in style, and I've been getting a lot of requests for them in the last couple of years.
DIYs are
Yeah.
very tempting, but
Okay.
some things are better left for the pros.
Yes.
Brad, what's your advice for people who are planning to do it themselves?
So the best way to learn how to do something, in my experience, is to roll your sleeves up and get at it. So, I find myself doing this kind of stuff at my house when I have a lot of toys, snowmobiles and four-wheelers and that
Yeah.
kind of stuff, and they notoriously break down a lot. And rarely do I ever make the problem worse. I might waste some of my time trying to fix it at times, but if you're willing to roll your sleeves up and get involved in a project, I would encourage you to do so. The thing that I would keep in mind is if you're renovating a bathroom often there is 2 or 3 other bathrooms in the house.
Okay.
So it's not going to be something that turns your family's life upside down. But if you get into a kitchen renovation or a laundry room renovation, and you're going to be without the ability to cook dinner,
Okay.
wash dishes, wash laundry, you got to make sure you have the time dedicated to take this thing apart and put it back together. Otherwise, there's going to be a lot of people in your house that are unhappy.
Yeah.
So that would
So-
be my advice: is make sure
If there's an option B, basically,
yeah,
go
make
for
sure
it.
that you're prepared for what is coming. That's my first piece of advice. Often, if you're DIYing it, it's nights and weekends, and then
Okay.
the projects take substantially longer. So the other thing that I would say is spend the money on a plumber and electrician.
Okay.
I'm not a big fan of plumbing and electrical yourself.
Mm-hmm.
If you make a mistake and you put up a piece of drywall that's not done right,
Okay.
the house is not going to burn down. If you do the electrical incorrectly or the plumbing incorrectly, you could be looking at tens of thousands of dollars worth of damage, or even worse, someone could get hurt, right? So I
Yeah.
would strongly, my advice to you is don't DIY plumbing and electrical. If you're lucky enough, you got a buddy who does it for a living.
Yeah.
Get him over there and have a few beers and get it done.
Yeah.
Or B, bite the bullet and have it done professionally. That's my advice.
So DIYs are rewarding, but not everything
Yeah.
should be done.
Yeah,
with
you'll be sick of the
same
project
person.
long before you're done. I
Yeah.
can guarantee you that, right?
Have you ever been to a house and you've seen a DIY mess up that you needed to fix?
Yeah, I mean, I see lots of mistakes that actual people that do it for a living do, and I see tons of them that are done by homeowners. You know, when we're
Okay.
renovating houses that are 100 years old, they've been renovated 3 or 4 times before. And the stuff that you find, well, I would like to say there's nothing that would surprise me anymore at this point, but there are times that I see stuff that even surprises me.
Yeah.
So you never know what you're going to find until you start taking stuff apart.
Yeah. All right, Brad. We've saved the biggest project for last: home additions.
Okay.
If you need an extra kitchen, an office, a living room, it's a huge investment. So why do you think people opt in to add an addition to the house and not moving to a different one?
Well, from my perspective, you've got to weigh the overall cost. So typically, if you're moving into a home, you're probably spending more money. I think most people can probably live with that. The thing that I think is tougher to live with is the cost just to move,
Okay.
right? And if you're one room short of your dream house, it may make more sense to build it where you are. Now, there's obviously, if you live in the city, there's some limitations to what you can do.
That is
But,
true.
Yeah, in the example that we're looking at here, we built a 16 by 12 sunroom addition. It would make a beautiful living room,
Yeah.
which is what it's used for today. It would be a great office for the backside of someone's home. The particulars of this project were a lady's mother who is getting on in years had moved in with her, and she's been living in the basement. And I think just living in the basement all day
Yeah.
was kind of a lot for her, and she wanted to get somewhere where
Now,
there's more
what we're
sun.
looking at here, Brad, you're actually creating the hole for the footing of the foundation.
That is correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So these were hand poured. So we had, as you can see, we have a small shovel in there doing some excavating, and then we built that foundation. That is a hand poured foundation that we built. Now, to be able to do that, we needed drawings and a permit from the city. So that was spec'd out in advance.
Yeah.
Before we started.
And once that's set up, what's the next
Yeah,
step?
you just start building it from the ground up.
Yeah.
So you build the floor, you start building it up from there. I will say one of the things I was incredibly happy with here is how seamless the tie into the existing house is. If you look at it, unless you were there the day it was built, I don't think you would know it's an addition.
Yeah.
Often additions are very obvious to the eye, but the matching, tying in the roof lines, it all turned out beautifully. In my
Yeah.
opinion.
Now, this is absolutely amazing. The end product looks seamless. It doesn't show in the photos, but you can see the flooring is the same as the one that's used. I believe that's the kitchen behind this living room.
It's very similar from the
Yeah.
outside. Once the garden beds go in, which I think the homeowner is doing themselves, and the grass is growing and all that, I don't think you'll ever know that that was an app.
Mm-hmm. As for the final part, the price breakdown
Okay.
for this home edition, it's totaled at $50,205. It needs a lot of work. You created the foundation, you've built the home, so you needed electrical. There's no plumbing in that specific edition.
Yeah, that's correct. So there was a gas line that had to be moved.
Okay.
Right, there was a gas barbecue. There was one gas line that had to be moved, but no, there was no plumber needed on that project. So I would say the homeowner wanted to be heavily involved in the process. So I actually put her in touch with Carbon Drafting, who does all of my drawings. She actually went to them directly.
Yeah.
They supplied an on-site visit, drawings, and then they handed back a city permit done. And she actually purchased some of the finishes directly. She got the flooring. She actually dealt with the windows and had them on site waiting for us. All in, she probably was in about 65.
65 total.
That's about
now,
what she spent.
The benefits of those home additions are not only instant, that you have the space that you need, but also they increase the value of the property itself. The bigger the footprint, the higher the value of the house. So they're winning both ways.
I agree with you. We're getting a little bit outside of my area of expertise. That's more where you guys live, but I would agree that you're adding some value to your home, and at some point you'll probably get that back. So I agree with you there for sure.
Brad, thank you so much for joining us today and giving us all this insight on home renovations. As for the listeners, always remember, budgeting, planning, and working with the right team can make all the difference. And if you're considering a home renovation, don't hesitate to reach out to Capital Finishing. Brad, any last words?
I would say if you're considering doing this, talk to a professional, get a good feel for what needs to be done. I'm a huge fan of talking to a realtor about the realty side, a contractor about the contracting side, and just try to get a 360-degree view of your project. Now, before we're done, I have something for you.
Oh.
I just want to say thank you for the invite. Here's a Capital Finishing toque. You can't buy these in stores, and you can rep the brand, man.
All right.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks again. And for our listeners, always remember to follow for more information when it comes to real estate, and have a good night.